Welcome to Starbound. My name's Aram, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyrin and Remike. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. Jack Harmon squinted at the flickering sensor display, tapping the screen twice with a calloused finger. The damn thing had been acting up for weeks, but replacement parts cost credits he didn't have. He shifted in the worn pilot seat of the Chum Bucket, his salvage vessel that had seen better days about 20 years ago. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered, adjusting the scan sensitivity. "Give me something worth dragging your sorry hole out here for." The Ceres asteroid belt sprawled before him, a navigational nightmare of tumbling rocks that most modern ships avoided with their fancy automated systems. Jack preferred it that way. Fewer competitors meant more salvage for those willing to fly manual. At 52, Jack wore his decades hard. Weathered face, steel gray hair cropped military short, and eyes that had seen too much space and not enough of anything good. A faded photograph of a smiling woman was taped to his console, alongside a set of tarnished service medals and a worn poker chip, remnants of a life that had slipped away one disappointment at a time. The scanner beeped suddenly, pulling his attention back to the present. An anomalous reading from an unremarkable asteroid about 2 clicks off his port side. "Well, hello there," Jack said, curiosity piqued. "What are you hiding?" He guided Chum Bucket closer, hands dancing over manual controls with practiced ease. The autopilot had died 3 years ago, and Jack never bothered replacing it. Machines couldn't anticipate the way a belt tumbled and shifted like he could. 30 years of salvage work had taught him to read the drift patterns, to feel the vacuum's currents like they were ocean tides. The asteroid spun lazily, unremarkable except for the odd composition reading his scanner kept flagging. Jack maneuvered alongside it, firing the anchoring harpoons with perfect timing. The magnetic clamps engaged with a satisfying thunk that reverberated through the hull. "Docked," he announced to no one, a habit from his fleet days when protocols demanded verbal confirmation of every action. Those days were long gone, ended by a dishonorable discharge after he'd rearranged a lieutenant's face for sending rookies into a radiation belt without proper shielding. Jack rose from his seat with a grunt, old injuries protesting. "Time to see if you're worth something or just another false read," he said, patting the console before heading to the airlock. His EVA suit had been patched so many times it resembled a quilt more than regulation equipment. Still, Jack trusted it more than the newer models. At least when something went wrong with this one, he could fix it himself instead of waiting for some proprietary diagnostic system to tell him what he already knew. Once outside, tethered to Chum Bucket by a safety line, Jack activated his suit's magnetic boots and walked across the asteroid's surface with steady, practiced steps. He pulled an old-fashioned drill from his tool belt, eschewing the sonic excavators that the dealers at Kronos Station charged an arm and a leg for. "All right, sweetheart," he said, pressing the drill against the asteroid's surface. "Let's see what you're made of." The drill bit into the rock with a satisfying vibration. Jack had always preferred mechanical tools. They never failed you because of a software glitch or because some alien manufacturer decided to update the operating system mid-job. 10 minutes of drilling confirmed his suspicions. The mineral composition was unusual, rich with rare metals that fetched decent prices on the market. But as the drill suddenly lurched forward, breaking through into unexpected emptiness, Jack's heart rate kicked up. "Just my luck," he grumbled, pulling back the drill. "Find a good vein and hit a void pocket." He widened the hole, clearing debris until it was large enough to shine his light through. What he saw made him freeze. Well, I'll be damned. The beam illuminated not a natural void, but what appeared to be a manufactured structure. Smooth walls with embedded panels. Jack's pulse quickened. Artificial structures meant technology, and technology meant credits. He enlarged the opening further, working methodically until the hole was big enough to fit through. His suit sensors analyzed the atmosphere inside. "Breathable mix," he muttered, surprised. "Old, but breathable." Jack hesitated only briefly before climbing through. A potential payday this big was worth the risk. Inside, his light swept across what was unmistakably a control room of some kind. Dormant consoles lined the walls, their design sleek yet somehow familiar. "Jackpot," he whispered, approaching the nearest console. Nothing happened when he touched it. No power. But something about the ergonomics of the design bothered him. It felt comfortable, intuitive. Most alien tech required specialized interfaces or adapters for human use, but these controls looked like they'd fit his hands perfectly. Jack moved deeper into the facility, searching for something portable enough to salvage. In what appeared to be a storage alcove, he found it. A cylindrical device about the size of an old thermos, smooth metal with no obvious seams or controls. When his gloved hand touched it, faint lights flickered across its surface. "Hello, beautiful," Jack said, carefully extracting the device and securing it in his pack. "You're coming with me." He took a final look around, mentally marking the location. If this one cylinder was valuable, the entire facility could set him up for life. He'd need to return with better equipment, and after ensuring no claim jumpers followed him back. Back aboard the chum bucket, Jack examined his find under the harsh light of his workbench. The cylinder was heavier than it looked, perfectly balanced in his hands. No visible seams or buttons marred its surface, but the lights still pulsed faintly at his touch. "How the hell do you open?" he muttered, turning it over. He tried everything. Pressure at different points, twisting each end, even gentle tapping in various patterns. Nothing worked. Frustrated, he set it down harder than intended. It rolled across the workbench, coming to rest against his old military dog tags that hung from a hook above the bench. The cylinder's lights brightened considerably. "Huh?" Jack said, leaning closer. Before he could investigate further, a proximity alarm blared through the cabin. Jack cursed, grabbing the cylinder and stashing it in a concealed compartment beneath the floor panels. He'd installed the hiding spot years ago for smuggling runs during leaner times. The scanner showed an alien customs patrol. Geld-designed vessels with their distinctive oval hulls. Jack didn't have permits for this sector, and bribes would cost more than his entire haul was worth. "Time to disappear," he muttered, powering down all non-essential systems and activating the stealth modifications he'd installed himself. The Geld scanners were good, but they were looking for power signatures, not cold ships playing dead in a debris field. Jack held his breath as the patrol passed within 50 meters of his ship, close enough that he could see the gun ports on their hulls. After 15 tense minutes, they moved on, apparently satisfied that this sector was clear. "That's right," Jack said, powering his systems back up. "Nothing to see here." He set course for Kronos Station, the nearest trading hub. Whatever he'd found, it was time to cash in, carefully. Kronos Station hung against the blackness of space like an ancient chandelier, all spindly arms and bloated central hub. Originally built by humans as a mining outpost, it had been acquired by a consortium of alien interests decades ago when Earth's economy collapsed and its off-world assets were carved up by creditors. These days, humans were barely tolerated in the lower levels, restricted to the dingiest berths and charged triple for basic services. Jack navigated Chum Bucket through the chaotic approach pattern, muttering about the deteriorating standards. "Call that a docking corridor?" he grumbled as a massive Tarco freighter cut him off, its engines spewing unfiltered plasma. "Back when humans ran this place, they'd have fined you into bankruptcy for venting that garbage." The docking officer, a bored-looking geld with the typical gray skin and over-large eyes of his species, barely glanced at Jack's identification before assigning him to Bay 47, the farthest from the central hub, naturally.
Maintenance access requires additional fee,
the geld droned.
14 credits per hour.
It didn't last month, Jack protested.
New station regulation, 14 credits.
Jack bit back the insult that sprang to his lips and slapped his credit chip on the scanner. No point making waves before he'd even found a buyer for his discovery. He made his way through the crowded lower concourse, avoiding the bulky Tarko dock workers who seemed to take pleasure in shouldering smaller species aside. The Tarko were the muscle of the station. 2.5 meters of dense bone and muscle with tempers as short as their intelligence. Jack had learned to give them a wide berth unless he was in the mood for a brawl. The self-important Geld traders watched from their elevated kiosks, thin gray fingers tapping constantly on data screens. They controlled the money and the rules, which they changed whenever it benefited them. Every human on the station had a story about Geld bureaucracy costing them a fortune in permits or administrative fees. And then there were the Finn, small, quick-fingered traders who specialized in luxury goods and information. They'd sell their own offspring if the price was right, but at least they were honest about their dishonesty. Jack preferred their transparent greed to the Guild's sanctimonious rulebook. He made his way to Grawl's Rare Finds, a cramped shop tucked between a protein processor and a suit repair facility. The heavy door slid open with a hiss, revealing a space cluttered with salvage from a dozen systems. Everything from broken drone parts to antique navigation equipment. Grawl himself sat behind a reinforced counter, his massive Tarko frame somehow fitting on a stool that looked far too delicate for his weight. Unlike most of his species, Grawl had a head for business and an appreciation for craftsmanship that transcended species barriers.
"Jack Harmon,"
Grawl rumbled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer.
"Still flying that coffin you call a ship?"
"She gets me where I need to go," Jack replied, dropping his sack of regular salvage on the counter. "Got some mid-grade ore samples and a couple of functioning power couplings from that wreck in Sector 8. Grawl examined each item with surprising delicacy for his massive three-fingered hands.
"Standard rate for the ore. Couplings are human manufacture, 30 credits each. Not much demand since the Guild started pushing their inferior garbage."
35, Jack countered automatically.
32, and I'm eating a loss at that price.
Done. The transaction complete, Jack hesitated before turning to leave. "Actually, Grawl, I found something else. Something unusual." Grawl's ridged brow furrowed, his small eyes narrowing.
"How unusual we talking, Jack?"
"Not here," Jack said quietly. "But let's just say it might be worth your while to keep an ear open for any special buyers in the market for rare tech." Grawl studied him for a long moment.
"There's been increased corporate activity lately. Guild conglomerate ships docking at all hours, not logging proper manifests."
He leaned forward.
"Be careful, Jack. They're looking for something specific, something valuable."
Jack nodded, filing away the information. "Keep this between us, all right?"
"Always do,"
Grawl rumbled.
"Stop by the rusty airlock later. Your friend Lena was asking about you. Said she had a tip on a new claim."
"Thanks, I might do that." As Jack left the shop, he couldn't shake the feeling he was being watched. He took a circuitous route to the rusty airlock, doubling back several times and passing through crowded areas where it would be harder for anyone to follow discreetly. The bar was exactly what its name suggested, a dive established in an actual decommissioned airlock from one of the station's earlier expansions. The atmosphere was thick with smoke from various species intoxicants, and the lighting was kept deliberately dim to prevent too many fights from breaking out over species-based grudges. Jack spotted Lena at their usual corner table, her back to the wall and a clear view of the entrance. Smart, as always. She lifted her glass in greeting as he approached. Lena Harper had the tough, no-nonsense look of someone who'd spent too many years breathing recycled air and fixing broken equipment with improvised tools. At 48, she was younger than Jack, but carried the same world weariness in her eyes. They'd served in the same fleet division years ago, though on different ships, and had the shared language of those who'd seen Earth's military pride slowly dismantled by budget cuts and alien trade restrictions.
"Thought you'd be dead by now,"
she said by way of greeting, sliding a glass of actual Earth whiskey toward him. "Not for lack of trying," Jack replied, taking the seat opposite her. "Grawl said you were asking about me."
"Heard you were working a claim out in Gamma Sector. Any luck?"
Jack shrugged noncommittally. "Enough to keep flying. You?"
"Hit a decent pocket of rare earths last month, enough to upgrade my scanner array."
She leaned forward.
"But that's not why I asked for you. Word is the Geld are paying premium for certain types of salvage these days. Very specific salvage."
"I'm listening." Lena glanced around before continuing in a lower voice.
"Old tech, pre-collapse tech specifically. Human manufacture, but not the junk we make these days. I'm talking about artifacts from the Lost Expansion."
The Lost Expansion was a footnote in human history books, a brief, supposedly glorious period of early interstellar exploration before the Great Collapse forced humanity to retreat to their home system. Most considered it propaganda from a more optimistic time, when Earth still had delusions of becoming a galactic power. "That's just stories," Jack said carefully, watching her reaction. "Colonial fairy tales to make us feel better about being bottom feeders now."
"Maybe,"
Lena replied with a knowing look.
"But the Geld are paying real credits for fairy tales these days. Thought you might want to know, since you've always had a knack for finding valuable garbage."
Jack considered sharing his discovery, but held back. Lena was as close to a friend as he had out here, but in the salvage business, trust only went so far. Instead, he pulled out his handheld projector and displayed a deliberately fuzzy image of the cylinder, not clear enough to identify it properly, but enough to gauge her reaction. "Ever seen anything like this?" Lena frowned, studying the image.
"Where'd you find it?"
"That's not an answer."
"Neither is that."
She sighed.
"No, I haven't. But it looks like it might be worth a conversation with the buyers at Meridian Market. They pay better than Grawl for unusual finds."
"Might check it out," Jack said, pocketing the projector. "Thanks for the tip."
"Jack,"
Lena said, her expression suddenly serious.
"be careful who you show that to. Lots of corporate types around lately. The kind who don't ask nicely."
"When have I ever not been careful?" Her laugh was answer enough. Meridian Market occupied the middle levels of Kronos Station, where the air was filtered twice and the artificial gravity didn't fluctuate during peak power usage. It catered to wealthier traders and corporate representatives, with security drones patrolling discreetly to ensure the riffraff stayed in the lower levels where they belonged. Jack had dressed in his least stained clothes and used his emergency station credit allotment to access the mid-level lifts. The cylinder was secure in an inside pocket of his jacket, wrapped in sensor-dampening fabric he'd acquired during a salvage run to an abandoned military outpost. The tech appraisal booths lined the far wall of the market, each staffed by representatives from various trading houses. Jack headed for one displaying the Geld technological conglomerate insignia, fearing if anyone would pay top dollar for unusual tech, it would be the species that controlled most of the galaxy's patents. The appraiser, a thin Geld with elaborate markings on his gray skin indicating high corporate rank, looked up from his data screen with obvious disdain as Jack approached.
Salvage appraisals are handled on level 3, he said dismissively. This booth is for authenticated technological artifacts only.
Then I'm in the right place, Jack replied, keeping his voice steady despite the reflexive anger that bubbled up whenever a Geld spoke to him like something scraped off a boot. I have an artifact that might interest your employers. The Geld, whose name badge identified him as Neth, sighed dramatically.
Very well. Present the item for evaluation.
Jack carefully unwrapped the cylinder and placed it on the scanning pad, keeping one hand positioned to snatch it back if necessary. Neth's expression shifted from boredom to amusement as he examined the object. He touched a control and a scan field enveloped the cylinder. Then he actually laughed, a thin, reedy sound that set Jack's teeth on edge.
Is this some kind of joke?
Neith asked, loud enough for nearby appraisers to hear.
Or are you genuinely ignorant enough to think this has value?
Jack's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? Neth gestured to several colleagues from neighboring booths.
Come see what this human has brought us. Apparently, they're getting desperate.
2 other Geld and a Finn trader approached, examining the cylinder with growing amusement.
It's clearly human-made,
Neth continued, his voice dripping with condescension.
Look at the inefficient metal alloy composition, the crude attempt at creating a seamless housing. The design language is characteristically human. All form, minimal function.
The other appraisers murmured in agreement, one of them actually patting Jack on the shoulder as if consoling a child.
I'll give you 20 credits for it,
Neth said magnanimously.
Not because it has any technological value, but some collectors find primitive artifacts amusing. A conversation piece, perhaps.
Jack's first instinct was to tell Neth exactly where he could shove his 20 credits, but years of dealing with alien bureaucrats had taught him to control his temper when necessary. What makes you so sure it's human-made? He asked instead. I found it deep in an uncharted section of the belt.
The material composition, the design elements, all consistent with human manufacturing techniques. Quite old, but unmistakably human,
Neth replied with academic certainty.
We see these pathetic attempts at advanced technology occasionally, remnants from when your species foolishly believed it could compete on the galactic stage.
As Neth picked up the cylinder to show his colleagues, something unexpected happened. The lights along its surface, which had been dormant since Jack wrapped it, suddenly flared to life. Symbols projected from one end, filling the air above the appraisal booth with unfamiliar characters. Neth dropped the cylinder in surprise. Jack lunged forward, catching it before it hit the ground. The moment it touched his hands, the projection disappeared.
What did you do?
Neth demanded, his professional demeanor cracking.
Activate it again.
Jack quickly backed away, clutching the cylinder. For something so worthless, you suddenly seem very interested. The security drones were already converging on the booth, drawn by the commotion. Neth composed himself, straightening his elaborate robes.
That device requires proper evaluation by our research division,
he said, his voice now cold and authoritative.
I am prepared to offer 2,000 credits as an initial assessment fee.
The dramatic increase in offer only confirmed Jack's suspicions. I think I'll get a second opinion, he replied, carefully rewrapping the cylinder.
That would be unwise,
Neth said, his large eyes narrowing to slits.
The conglomerate is the only entity authorized to evaluate potentially hazardous technological artifacts. For your own safety, I must insist.
Funny, I don't feel unsafe, Jack said, backing toward the market's main thoroughfare. Thanks for the expert assessment, though. Very educational. Before Neth could respond, Jack turned and walked briskly away, resisting the urge to run. Running attracted attention, and attention was the last thing he wanted right now.
Evaluate this, you gray-skinned parasite,
Jack muttered once safely back aboard his ship. He placed the cylinder on his workbench, studying it with renewed interest. Something about Neth's reaction bothered him. The Geld were masters of composure, trained from birth to hide their emotions during negotiations. Yet Neth had displayed genuine surprise when the cylinder activated, and genuine desire to possess it afterward.
What are you exactly?
Jack asked the cylinder, turning it over in his hands. The faint lights pulsed in response to his touch, but the projection didn't reappear. Jack tried to recall exactly what had happened in the market. The cylinder had activated when Neth was handling it, not when Jack held it. Yet it had been responsive to his touch back on the asteroid and afterward. What was different? Jack's eyes fell on his military dog tags hanging beside the workbench. The cylinder had reacted more strongly when it rolled against them earlier. On a hunch, he placed the tags directly on the cylinder's surface. The lights brightened, but still no projection.
Oh, something's missing,
he muttered, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. In frustration, he barked out an old fleet authorization code that had been drilled into him during training.
TFDF 7734 Gamma override.
To his astonishment, the cylinder hummed to life. Bright light erupted from both ends, coalescing into a holographic interface that hovered in the air before him. Symbols and diagrams appeared, but what shocked Jack most was that he could read them. They were in English, albeit in an archaic font he'd only seen in historical archives. The interface displayed a simple message. User, human. Authorized access level 2. ECSV, Pioneer Navigation and Data Module. Status, emergency power. Data integrity, 87%.
Holy shit,
Jack whispered, reaching out to touch the holographic controls. The interface responded to his gesture, bringing up additional information. Technical schematics, navigational data, personnel logs, all from a vessel called the ECSV Pioneer, and a timestamp that made Jack's blood run cold. 2287 CE, nearly 700 years ago.
That's not possible,
he said aloud. According to every history book, humans hadn't achieved meaningful space travel until almost a century after that date, and even then, they'd barely established a presence beyond Mars. The technology he was looking at now, displayed by a device centuries old, was far beyond current human capabilities. Before he could process this revelation, Chum Bucket's security system chimed a warning. Jack checked his sensors. An expensive corporate ship with Geld registry markings was running an active scan pattern directly toward his docking bay.
Damn it!
Jack quickly deactivated the cylinder and stashed it back in its hiding place. He activated his ship's countermeasures, custom modifications that masked life signs and power signatures by routing everything through a series of dampening circuits. It wouldn't fool a military-grade scanner, but it might confuse a corporate security sweep. Through the viewport, he watched the Geld vessel hover near his docking slip. Its scanning beams swept across Chum Bucket's hull repeatedly, searching for something specific. After several tense minutes, it finally moved away, continuing down the docking arm to the next bay. Jack released the breath he'd been holding.
That was too close.
He needed information, and he needed it fast. If the Geld were already hunting for him, time was running out. He activated his secure comm channel, a frequency-hopping system he'd salvaged from a decommissioned fleet vessel that the alien authorities hadn't bothered to flag as restricted technology.
Lena, you there? We need to talk, privately.
After a brief pause, her voice came through, deliberately casual.
Jack, nice to hear from you so soon. How about a drink at Maintenance Junction in 20?
Perfect. Don't bring company.
Maintenance Junction was their code for an automated repair hub on Level 4 that was largely deserted during third shift. It offered privacy without the obviousness of meeting in either of their ships.
You've got trouble written all over you.
Lena said by way of greeting when they met in the shadowy corridor behind the repair hub.
What happened in Meridian?
Jack gave her a quick rundown of his encounter with Neth and the subsequent corporate vessels searching his ship. I need to know what's going on, he finished. You mentioned the Guild are paying for old human tech. What exactly are they looking for? Lena's expression grew serious.
There's been chatter for months. Corporate ships making unscheduled stops at abandoned mining outposts, recovery teams with military-grade equipment, all looking for tech from what they call the Architect period.
The Architects? Jack frowned. The mythical first spacefaring species. What's that got to do with human technology?
That's the thing,
Lena replied, glancing around to ensure they were still alone.
Some people who've been out in the deep black for decades, say the Architects weren't a myth. They were real, and they weren't some ancient alien species.
She paused meaningfully.
They were us, Jack. Humans.
That's crazy, Jack said automatically, but the cylinder hidden on his ship suggested otherwise.
Is it? Think about it. Why are humans the only species restricted from developing certain technologies? Why are our colonial efforts always mysteriously sabotaged or bankrupted? Why are we fed that bullshit story about the Great Collapse?
Jack had always attributed humanity's stunted expansion to bad luck and worse politics. The idea of a deliberate suppression campaign seemed paranoid, but after what he'd seen... I found something, Lena, he admitted finally. Something that might support that theory.
The cylinder?
He nodded. It's human tech, all right, but it's dated 2287, and it contains information about a colonial mining vessel, technology we supposedly didn't have for another century. Lena's eyes widened.
Jack, if that's true, you need to get off this station immediately. The Guild will tear this place apart to find you.
I need more information first. I'm going to talk to Grawl. He's been around longer than most of the station's security goons.
Be careful,
Lena warned.
And stay on secure channels. I'll keep an ear to the ground, see what else I can dig up about these Architect hunts.
Grawl's shop was closed when Jack arrived, but the private entrance in the back, reserved for special merchandise, opened at his knock. Grawl ushered him in quickly, securing the heavy door behind them.
You've stirred up a hornet's nest, Jack,
the Tarko rumbled, leading him to a reinforced back room.
Guild corporate security has been flashing your image at checkpoints, claiming you stole proprietary technology.
That's rich coming from them, Jack replied, taking a seat in one of the oversized chairs. He placed the cylinder on the table between them. I need to know what this is, Grawl. The truth. Grawl stared at the cylinder for a long moment, his leathery features unreadable.
Where did you find it?
Hidden facility inside an asteroid. Looked like a control room of some kind. The Tarko nodded slowly.
I suspected something like this would surface eventually. The Guild grew careless, thinking they'd found all the remnants.
He leaned forward.
What do you know about the Architects, Jack?
Just what everyone knows. Supposedly the first spacefaring species, responsible for the foundational technologies that enabled interstellar civilization. Long extinct.
A convenient story,
Grawl said, his voice dropping to a low rumble.
One the Guild have spent centuries reinforcing.
Lena suggested the Architects might have been human, Jack said carefully, watching Grawl's reaction. The Tarko's small eyes glinted.
Not just humans, Jack. Your ancestors. The first expansion wasn't some minor colonial effort as your history books claim. It was the beginning of a vast human interstellar civilization. My species encountered yours 700 years ago, when the Tarko were still planet-bound warriors fighting with projectile weapons.
Jack struggled to process this. If that's true, what happened? How did we fall so far?
That
Grawl said gravely.
Is the question the Guild have killed to keep unanswered.
A knock at the door interrupted them. Grawl tensed, reaching for something under his table.
Were you followed?
Not a chance, Jack replied, already moving toward the back exit. Grawl checked a security monitor, then relaxed slightly.
It's my cousin. I called her when your face started appearing on security bulletins.
He opened the door to admit a Tarko female, strikingly different from most of her species. Where most Tarko were bulky with thick limbs and heavy features, she was relatively lean and moved with unexpected grace. Her combat exoskeleton, a modified military model, hummed faintly as she entered.
Jack Harmon, meet Cora, former Tarko Special Operations, now independent security consultant. If anyone can help you stay alive long enough to use whatever you found, it's her.
Cora sized up Jack with a quick, professional glance.
You've upset the Guild hierarchy. Impressive for a human salvager.
Wasn't trying to, Jack replied. Just looking for a payday.
You may have found something far more valuable than credits,
she said, her voice surprisingly melodic for a Tarko.
Grawl filled me in on your discovery. If it's what we think it is, the Guild will deploy everything they have to retrieve it.
Why? What's so special about old human tech? Cora exchanged a look with Grawl before answering.
Because the entire Guild technological empire is built on stolen human innovations. They've been locating and harvesting the remains of your ancestral colonies for centuries, reverse engineering the technology and claiming it as their own.
That's why they keep humans technologically stunted, Grawl added. If you ever redeveloped your former capabilities, their lie would be exposed.
Jack glanced at the cylinder.
So, this is...
potentially the evidence that could shatter the Guild's technological monopoly,
Cora finished.
I've been hunting proof like this for years.
Why would a Tarko care about human history? Jack asked bluntly.
Because the Tarko were allies with humans during the first expansion, she replied. Equal partners, not the muscle-bound servants the Guild have relegated us to. My people have their own reasons to see the truth revealed.
Jack considered this for a moment. I need to get back to my ship. If this thing contains what you say it does, I want to extract as much data as possible before the Guild track me down.
Too risky, Cora said. They'll be watching your berth. I have a secured facility nearby where we can examine the artifact safely.
I'm not letting this out of my sight, Jack stated firmly.
Then I'm coming with you, she countered. Grawl has hired my services to ensure both you and that device survive the next 24 hours.
Jack looked to Grawl, who nodded confirmation.
She's the best, Jack, and you'll need help if you plan to leave the station with that thing.
Fine, Jack conceded. But we do this my way. I don't need a babysitter. Cora's expression might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell with Tarko facial features.
No, Mr. Harmon. What you need is someone who knows how to kill Guild security forces efficiently. Fortunately, that's a specialty of mine.
Back aboard the chum bucket, Jack placed the cylinder on his workbench while Cora secured the ship's entry points and swept for surveillance devices.
Your countermeasures are surprisingly effective,
she noted, examining his security modifications.
Military grade, but customized.
Fleet training comes in handy sometimes, Jack replied, activating the cylinder with the same authorization code as before. The holographic interface sprang to life, more stable this time, as though the device was adapting to regular use. Cora stared at the English text and diagrams with barely concealed amazement.
The legends were true,
she breathed.
Human technological achievement exceeded anything in the current galactic record.
Jack navigated through the interface, finding it surprisingly intuitive despite its age. According to this, the ECSV Pioneer was the start of something called Project Diaspora, a massive colonial expansion initiative. There are references to dozens of established human settlements across multiple star systems.
Can you access the navigational data?
Cora asked, leaning closer. Jack tried, but portions of the interface remained locked. It's requiring higher authorization for some functions.
The Geld must never see this,
Cora said firmly.
It would validate everything they've worked centuries to suppress.
A proximity alarm interrupted them. Jack checked the external cameras and cursed. We've got company. Geld security, approaching from both ends of the docking arm.
How many?
At least 8 that I can see, probably more waiting at the checkpoints. Cora moved to the viewport, assessing the situation with professional detachment.
We need to leave immediately. Can this vessel break docking protocols without authorization?
You bet your ass it can, Jack replied, already moving to the pilot's seat. But we'll have the entire station's defense system on us the moment we do.
Perhaps I can help with that.
A new voice came from the entry hatch, causing both of them to spin around, weapons drawn. Lena stood in the doorway, hands raised slightly.
Easy, Jack. I figured you need an exit strategy.
How did you get past my locks? Jack demanded, lowering his pistol.
Please, I've been breaking into your ship to borrow equipment for years, she replied, stepping fully inside and securing the latch behind her. Her eyes widened at the sight of the activated cylinder. Is that it? The architect tech? Human tech,
Cora corrected.
From the first expansion.
Lena approached cautiously, staring at the holographic display. As she neared, the interface flickered, then expanded, displaying additional options. It's responding to you, Jack noted with surprise.
Human DNA recognition,
Cora suggested. Jack noticed something else. The cylinder's lights pulsed more strongly with 2 humans nearby. It's powering up more fully. Let me try accessing those locked navigational files again. This time, the interface complied, revealing a complex star chart with various markers and coordinates. One location was highlighted with a pulsing indicator. What is this place? Jack asked, pointing to the highlighted coordinates.
Unknown,
Cora replied, studying the chart.
These coordinates lie outside the established trade routes, in a sector typically avoided due to gravitational anomalies.
A sharp bang against the exterior hatch interrupted them.
Geld Technological Conglomerate Security, open this vessel immediately for inspection!
Time's up, Jack muttered, quickly copying the coordinates to Chumbucket's navigation system. Lena, you said you had an exit strategy? She nodded, pulling a small device from her pocket.
Remote trigger for a chemical spill in Bay 42. Emergency protocols will lock down the affected areas, creating confusion in the station's security grid. That might work,
Cora said, looking impressed.
What's the blast radius? Non-explosive, Lena clarified. Just highly corrosive to certain metal alloys, like the ones used in Geld armor plating.
Jack grinned despite the situation. You always did have a knack for creative solutions.
I'll create the diversion,
Lena said, moving toward the hatch.
You two prepare for immediate departure.
You're coming with us, Jack insisted. Once they connect you to this, you'll be just as hunted as we are. Lena hesitated, then nodded.
Fine, but we'll need to split up temporarily. I need to access a maintenance terminal to trigger the release remotely.
Too dangerous to go alone, Cora objected.
I can handle myself,
Lena replied firmly.
Jack knows I'm right. Meet me at emergency exit E17 in 10 minutes.
Before either could argue further, she slipped out through the maintenance access panel, a route that wouldn't be covered by the Geld security forces focused on the main hatch.
She's either very brave or very foolish,
Cora remarked. Both, Jack replied, powering up Chumbucket's engines. But she's right about splitting up. The Geld will focus their pursuit on this ship, especially once we break docking protocols.
Then we need a diversion of our own,
Cora said, moving to one of Jack's equipment lockers.
Do you have any mining charges aboard?
Jack grinned. What kind of salvager would I be if I didn't? 10 minutes later, chaos engulfed the docking station. Emergency alarms blared as containment teams rushed to deal with the highly corrosive chemical leak in Bay 42. Simultaneously, a series of small explosions along the docking arm's structural supports triggered automatic safety protocols, sealing off entire sections and creating a station-wide panic. Amid the confusion, Chum Bucket detached from its berth without authorization, its transponder suddenly identifying it as a station maintenance vessel responding to the emergency. This particular hack had cost Jack a small fortune in bribes to a disgruntled station tech years ago, but it was proving worth every credit now. Jack guided the ship through the emergency maintenance shaft, a tight fit that most pilots wouldn't attempt without computer assistance. But Jack hadn't survived 3 decades in the belt relying on automation.
Station security has deployed intercept vessels,
Cora reported from the co-pilot seat, monitoring the external sensors.
ETA 3 minutes.
They'll be expecting us to head for the main shipping lanes, Jack replied, angling Chum Bucket toward the station's waste processing section instead. We're going out with the trash.
The radiation levels in that section
are perfect for masking our signature, Jack finished, flipping switches to activate additional shielding around the ship's core systems. Old salvager trick. The processing outflow creates enough interference to blind standard scanning systems. As they approached the massive outflow pipes, Jack killed the running lights and diverted power to the engines. The maneuver required split-second timing. Too early and they'd be spotted. Too late and they'd be caught in the actual waste discharge. Hold on to something, he warned, gripping the manual controls tightly. Chum Bucket shot forward just as the outflow cycle began, the ship momentarily lost in the massive plume of superheated particles and debris. Jack counted silently to himself, feeling the seconds tick by, then yanked the controls hard, sending them veering away from the station at maximum burn. "Pursuit?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the flight path. Cora checked the sensors.
2 vessels attempting to track us, but they're following a projected course 30 degrees off our actual trajectory.
Good, Jack said, allowing himself a small smile of satisfaction. Now we need to rendezvous with Lena.
If she made it out,
Cora noted. She made it, Jack replied with certainty. Lena's too stubborn to die. True to his word, they found her small shuttle waiting at the predetermined coordinates, running dark to avoid detection. Once aboard Chum Bucket, Lena explained that she'd used her station maintenance clearance to access an emergency evacuation pod, one of many installed after a life support failure had killed dozens of workers years ago.
"The station's in complete lockdown," she reported. "The Guild are telling everyone it was a coordinated terrorist attack. They've already blamed it on human separatists." "Convenient scapegoat,"
Cora remarked. "Always are," Jack agreed, setting a course away from major shipping lanes. Now, let's see what was so important about those coordinates. With all 3 gathered around the navigation console, Jack activated the cylinder again. Its response was even stronger now, the holographic display expanding to fill the ship's small common area. It projected a complete star chart of the sector, including details not found on any current navigational database. According to this, Jack said, examining the data, there's something called Forward Base Epsilon at these coordinates, a support hub for colonial operations in this sector.
"If it still exists after 7 centuries, it could contain invaluable historical and technological data,"
Cora said, excitement evident in her voice.
"Or it could be a wild goose chase,"
Lena countered pragmatically.
"Even if it was there once, the Guild have had centuries to find and strip it."
There's only one way to find out, Jack replied, locking in the course. Let's go see what our ancestors left behind. The journey to the coordinates took 3 days, during which they maintained communication silence and ran with minimal power. The cylinder continued to reveal more of its secrets as they traveled, responding increasingly to the presence of 2 humans aboard. Jack learned that Project Diaspora had been humanity's greatest achievement, a massive interstellar colonization initiative launched in the late 22nd century after the development of practical faster-than-light travel. The ECSV Pioneer had been one of hundreds of resource extraction vessels supporting the growing network of human colonies. According to these records, he told the others as they gathered for a meal of reconstituted protein, humanity had established over 40 self-sustaining colonies across 17 star systems by 2300. They even encountered and peacefully integrated several alien species, including early Tarko settlements.
My people's histories speak of the Sky Allies,
Cora confirmed.
beings who came from the stars and shared knowledge freely, asking only for alliance and trade in return. Our elders described them as looking like you, but our scientists dismissed these stories as tribal myths after the Geld became our benefactors. But there's still no explanation of what happened,
Lena pointed out.
If humans were this advanced, how did we end up confined to our home system, barely able to maintain our lunar colonies?
That's what we need to find out,
Jack replied.
and maybe this forward base will have answers.
When they finally reached the coordinates, they found nothing. Empty space, no sign of any structure or anomaly.
Another dead end,
Lena said with obvious disappointment. But Jack wasn't convinced.
The cylinder brought us here for a reason.
He activated it again, studying the holographic display carefully. Among the data points was a complex sequence of gravitational measurements that hadn't made sense before. Cora leaned over his shoulder, eyes widening in recognition.
That's a cloaking detection algorithm,
She said.
similar to what Tarko Special Forces use to locate hidden installations, but far more sophisticated.
With Cora's help, Jack input the sequence into Chum Bucket sensors, calibrating them to detect the specific gravitational microdistortions the algorithm described. Slowly, a shape began to resolve on their screens. A massive structure, easily 10 times the size of Kronos Station, hidden by some advanced cloaking technology.
I'll be damned, Lena whispered. It's been here all along.
As they approached, automated defense systems suddenly activated, targeting arrays locking onto Chum Bucket with deadly precision. Warning messages in dozens of languages flashed across their communications screen, ordering them to withdraw immediately or face destruction.
So much for a warm welcome,
Jack muttered, preparing to retreat to a safe distance. Then, on a hunch, he transmitted his old military authorization code, the same one that had activated the cylinder. The response was immediate. The targeting systems powered down, and a new message appeared on their screen in English. Human vessel identified. Docking protocols initiated. Welcome to Forward Base Epsilon.
How did you know that would work?
Lena asked, amazed. Jack shrugged.
I didn't, but nothing about this mission has made sense so far. Might as well keep rolling the dice.
Guided by automated systems, Chum Bucket docked at the massive station. Environmental readings confirmed breathable atmosphere, though the oxygen levels were slightly lower than standard, consistent with older human environmental preferences before atmospheric degradation of Earth had necessitated adaptation.
We should proceed with caution,
Cora advised, checking her weapons.
Even if this was a human installation, we don't know what might have happened here in 7 centuries.
Jack nodded agreement, distributing the limited arsenal they had aboard, his trusty sidearm for himself, an old fleet-issue pulse rifle for Lena, and Cora's own impressive collection of Tarko weaponry. They cycled through the airlock and entered the station, emergency lighting activated along their path, illuminating corridors clearly designed for human use. The station appeared to be in a state of low-power hibernation rather than abandonment, its systems responding to their presence by gradually increasing life support in the sections they entered.
The preservation is remarkable,
Cora noted, examining the construction.
This technology would be considered advanced even by our current standards.
They made their way to what appeared to be a central control hub, following the lighting pathway that seemed to be guiding them deliberately. The doors slid open as they approached, revealing a circular chamber filled with control stations and displays. As they entered, the main systems began powering up, holographic interfaces springing to life around the room. A scanning field swept over them, and a computerized voice spoke in archaic but understandable English.
Human personnel identified. Authorization level Alpha. Non-human entity identified. Tarko physiology. Authorization level Beta. Welcome to Forward Base Epsilon, Colonial Support Hub, Sector 7.
It recognizes us,
Lena said in wonder.
More importantly, it recognized you two as human authorities and me as a Tarko ally,
Cora added,
confirming the historical alliance.
Jack approached the central console where the main interface awaited input.
Let's see what secrets you're hiding,
he murmured, placing his hand on the control surface. The system responded immediately, bringing up historical records, technical schematics, and status reports. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming, but one file stood out, a historical summary labeled the Diaspora Protocol. Jack opened it, and a comprehensive timeline appeared, detailing humanity's expansion among the stars. By the early 24th century, the Terran Cooperative had become a major interstellar power with dozens of thriving colonies and peaceful relations with several alien species, including the Tarko. The technological achievements were staggering. FTL travel, matter conversion, gravity manipulation, even limited terraforming capabilities. But in 2327, the timeline abruptly ended, replaced by a final protocol entry. Diaspora contingency activated. All colonial assets entering hibernation status. Recall protocol initiated. Historical suppression measures deployed. May our descendants forgive what necessity demands.
What happened in 2327?
Lena wondered aloud. Before they could investigate further, the station's proximity alarms activated. A vessel was approaching, a massive Geld corporate flagship accompanied by several smaller craft.
They found us,
Cora said grimly, checking her weapons.
They must have tracked your ship despite the countermeasures.
Jack accessed the station's external sensors, confirming the threat. Multiple boarding craft approaching. They'll breach within minutes.
We need to download as much of this data as possible,
Lena said, already searching for storage devices.
If we can get this information back to Earth, it changes everything.
Jack found what appeared to be a data core interface in the central console.
Here, this looks like a primary information storage unit.
As Lena worked to extract the data core, Jack accessed the station's security systems. To his surprise, many were still operational, including defense countermeasures that would be considered advanced even by current military standards.
I think I can slow them down,
he said, activating defensive protocols with his old military authorization codes. Outside, automated weapons platforms emerged from concealed positions on the station's exterior, targeting the approaching Geld vessels.
That should buy us some time,
Jack said, turning to Cora.
We need an escape route.
The Tarko warrior was studying a station schematic sheet pulled up on a secondary console.
There are maintenance access ways that could lead us back to the docking bay. If we can reach your ship before they establish a full boarding party, we might slip past in the confusion.
The first impacts rocked the station as Geld boarding craft that managed to evade the station defenses attached to the outer hull, cutting tools already working to breach the armored exterior.
We need to move,
Jack urged as Lena finished extracting the data core, a small crystalline matrix that she carefully secured in a protective case. They made their way through the station's corridors, guided by Cora's tactical expertise and the schematics she'd memorized. The sounds of Geld security forces echoed through the station as multiple breach points were established.
This way,
Cora directed, leading them through a maintenance access way that bypassed the main corridors where Geld forces would be advancing. They were halfway to the docking bay when they encountered the first Geld security team, 6 heavily armed soldiers led by a corporate enforcement officer. Jack reacted instantly, pushing Lena behind a structural support while firing his sidearm to provide covering fire. Cora moved with surprising speed for her size, flanking the Geld squad and taking down 3 with precise shots from her Tarko combat rifle. The remaining Geld scattered for cover, but they had the advantage of numbers and position. Jack and Cora exchanged fire with them, but they were pinned down and losing ground.
We're not going to make it through this way,
Jack shouted over the weapons fire. Lena pointed to a cargo control panel on the wall nearby.
Jack, those are conveyor controls for the automated cargo system.
Jack understood immediately. The station would have used automated transport systems to move materials throughout its vast structure. He fought his way to the panel, taking a glancing hit to his left arm in the process, and accessed the controls.
When I give the signal, be ready to move!
He called to the others. He overrode the safety protocols and activated the primary cargo transport system at maximum velocity. Huge container pods began moving through the adjacent cargo tunnel, their massive bulk accelerating to dangerous speeds as the safety limiters were disabled.
Now!
Jack shouted, hitting the emergency access control. A section of wall slid open, revealing the cargo tunnel. The three of them dove through just as a massive cargo pod thundered past, continuing down the tunnel to where Geld forces were positioned. The impact was catastrophic. The multi-ton container crushed everything in its path, clearing their route forward.
That's one way to solve a problem,
Lena remarked, helping Jack to his feet. They continued toward the docking bay, but more Geld forces were converging from multiple directions. They were forced to divert into a maintenance bay, temporarily sealing the doors behind them.
We're running out of options,
Cora observed grimly, checking her weapon's charge. Before they could formulate a new plan, the bay doors on the opposite side opened, revealing a Geld official in elaborate corporate regalia, flanked by a security chief and several guards. His gray skin bore the distinctive markings of the highest echelons of Geld society.
I am Executive Director Dran of the Geld Technological Conglomerate,
he announced, his voice carrying the artificial modulation that high-ranking Geld used to denote authority.
You have illegally accessed proprietary Geld technology and historical archives. Surrender immediately.
Proprietary? Jack scoffed, stepping forward despite Cora's warning gesture. You mean stolen? From us? From humans? Dran's large eyes narrowed slightly, the Geld equivalent of a dismissive smile.
An interesting perspective, but historically inaccurate. The architect technologies have been under Geld stewardship for centuries, developed through our superior scientific understanding. We've seen the historical records,
Lena countered, the data core secure in her pack.
Humans were the architects. You've been stealing our technology and suppressing our advancement to maintain your power. A simplified view of a complex historical reality,
Dran replied smoothly.
The Geld discovered a damaged human vessel centuries ago, a primitive attempt at interstellar travel. We salvaged what useful concepts it contained and properly developed them into the technologies that enabled galactic civilization. Humans simply lacked the capacity to fulfill the potential of their crude early designs.
As Dran continued his monologue, Jack quietly surveyed the maintenance bay, noticing an emergency evacuation pod nestled in a recessed alcove. You're lying, Jack said, deliberately keeping Dran talking while subtly positioning himself and the others toward the evacuation pod. You found our colonies after something forced us to withdraw. You stripped our technology piece by piece and built your empire on our innovations while ensuring we never redeveloped the capability to challenge your lie. Dran's composed facade cracked slightly.
What happened to human expansion is irrelevant. What matters is the current balance of power, a balance you are threatening with this discovery.
The Geld security chief leaned in, whispering something to Dran while gesturing toward monitoring equipment. Dran's expression changed to one of alarm.
Stop them! They're activating the station systems!
Jack hadn't consciously done anything, but he felt the neural connection to the station strengthening. Somehow, his outdated military implant, considered obsolete junk by modern standards, was perfectly compatible with the station's technology. In a moment of clarity, Jack understood. He fully embraced the neural link, feeling the station systems respond to his commands. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, separating the Geld forces. The evacuation pod activated, its hatch opening for the team. Get in! Jack shouted toward Lena and Cora. I'll hold him off! As they scrambled into the pod, Jack accessed the station's communications array, broadcasting the historical data to all ships in range, including the nearby trading vessels that had followed the Geld flagship out of curiosity. The truth should be free, Jack announced over the station's communication system, his voice echoing through the corridors as the Geld forces scrambled to regain control. Humanity didn't fail. We weren't primitive. We were the architects, and today we reclaim our history. With that final declaration, he backed into the evacuation pod, the hatch sealing behind him just as Geld security breached the maintenance bay doors. The pod detached from the station with a jolt, its propulsion system far more advanced than anything Jack had encountered in modern vessels. Through the viewport, they watched as the Geld flagship opened fire on the station, attempting to destroy the evidence. To their astonishment, the ancient station's defense systems activated fully, returning fire with weapons that sliced through the Geld flagship's shields with ease. The station was fighting back, protecting itself and them with technology 7 centuries old, yet still superior to the Geld's best efforts. "Cora!" Jack called urgently. "Did you remote pilot Chumbucket clear the station?" She nodded.
It's holding position 2 kilometers out, cloaked with the systems we activated earlier.
Using the pod's surprisingly sophisticated controls, they navigated to rendezvous with Chumbucket. As they transferred between vessels, a final transmission came through from the station.
Protocol Omega initiated. Historical data dissemination complete. Self-preservation no longer priority. Initiating terminal defensive measure to prevent technology misuse. Farewell, descendants. Remember us better than we remembered ourselves.
The station's power signature surged dramatically, then collapsed in on itself, creating a localized energy implosion that consumed both the station and the crippled Geld flagship in a blinding flash of light.
A self-destruction protocol, Cora said softly. A final safeguard.
Jack nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of loss. They built it to be found when we were ready, and to be destroyed if the wrong people tried to take it. As they moved Chumbucket to a safe distance, they examined the evacuation pod more thoroughly. It wasn't just an escape craft, but a specially designed preservation module containing a complete technical library and manufacturing templates. The true treasure of Forward Base Epsilon, preserved for future generations to discover. "With this," Lena said, examining the crystalline data core,
humanity can begin reclaiming our heritage. The Geld monopoly on advanced technology ends today.
"It won't be that simple," Cora cautioned. "The Geld will fight to maintain their position. They'll deny everything, claim the data is fabricated." "Let them," Jack replied, setting course for Earth. "The truth has a way of spreading, especially when it confirms what people have suspected all along. And we're not the only ones who received that broadcast. Every independent trader and ship in this sector now has proof of humanity's true history." In the weeks that followed, the revelation sent shockwaves through galactic society. The Geld issued official denials, claiming the data was human propaganda, but too many independent sources had received the transmission to dismiss it entirely. The Tarko, learning that humans had once treated their ancestors as equals rather than the subservient role the Geld had engineered for them, began forming new alliances with Earth representatives. Other species, long resentful of Geld technological dominance, seized the opportunity to realign their allegiances. Jack found himself suddenly in demand. Earth governors offered him positions within their diplomatic corps. Corporate interests wanted him as a consultant. Everyone wanted a piece of the man who had rediscovered humanity's lost legacy. He turned them all down. "Not my style," he told Lena as they sat in a bar on Earth, their first visit to the homeworld in years. "I don't do committees or boardrooms."
"So, what will you do?" she asked. "Go back to salvage work?"
Jack smiled. "Something like that, but with better equipment this time." He'd accepted a contract to help recover more human artifacts, now with proper backing and resources. Chumbucket had been overhauled with some of the recovered technology, making it the most advanced antique in space. Cora had decided to join him permanently as a partner. The Tarko warrior had found her own kind of freedom in their adventure, breaking away from the limitations her society had placed on her. Their professional relationship had evolved into something more personal, an unlikely pairing that nonetheless made perfect sense to both of them. Lena had chosen a different path, staying on Earth to work with the scientific teams analyzing the recovered data. But she'd extracted a promise from Jack to rendezvous when the political situation settled down. "You know," Jack said, looking out the viewport at the distant stars, "I've been thinking about what happened to the first expansion, why humanity retreated and forgot its achievements."
The historical data suggested some kind of threat, Lena replied. Something that forced a deliberate withdrawal and memory suppression.
Which means it might still be out there, Jack noted. Our ancestors faced something so dangerous, they chose to erase their own accomplishments rather than continue to face it.
All the more reason to be prepared this time, Lena said. To reclaim our technology, but learn from their mistakes.
Jack nodded, finishing his drink.
Humanity lost its way once, forgot what we were capable of. But now, we have a second chance now.
The next day, as Jack and Cora prepared to depart Earth to investigate another set of coordinates from the recovered data, he took a final look at his home planet from orbit.
"You think they'll get it right this time?"
Cora asked, joining him at the viewport.
"I think we've got a better shot than we did yesterday," Jack replied. "And this time we have allies who know the truth."
He glanced at her with a smile.
"Partners who'll keep us honest."
Cora's expression softened into what Jack now recognized as her version of a smile.
Perhaps this time humans will build something even greater than before.
"Only one way to find out,"
Jack said, returning to the pilot seat and setting course for the stars. The antique salvager and his unlikely crew had discovered one truth, but the universe held many more secrets waiting to be discovered, and Jack Harmon had always been good at finding valuable things others had discarded.